I'm going to turn the camera. My cell phone. My cell phone is taping the laptop. That's how ghetto I am.
Oh, you should be able to connect directly through the laptop. I could show you that in the next batch.
All right.
It's really easy. Facebook has this thing that's called Be Live. I just figured it out.
Oh, okay. I tried that and couldn't get it working on my laptop.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah,
okay.
so...
Well, whichever way, it's cool.
Okay. Well, you guys that aren't on here yet, they will be soon because I posted the heck out of this. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. This is my way of letting you get to meet people that are on Facebook that I know and have met or have gotten to know on Facebook. Today we have a legend. I call her a legend. She might not think she is, but to me, she's a legend. She does...
Hold on. I'm seeing that we're having trouble.
We are?
It's giving me a trouble signal. Yeah, from Facebook. Make sure we get this.
Okay.
Okay, I got a tag, but it keeps saying something went wrong. We're having trouble playing this video. So I'm going to be able to share. Let me go to your page real quick, right as we're about to start. Hey, everybody, don't feel bad. We're all doing this. Every guys with major comedy specials, everyone's trying to work through the tech. Oh, no, it's working. Okay, it's working. I see it. Fantastic. I'm
awesome.
Sorry.
That's okay.
To interrupt. Okay.
It's better safe than sorry. So today, you guys, we have the amazing Maija DiGiorgio. She hails from New York. Have I got that right?
Yeah.
And she's in LA. She does everything, you guys. She acts. She sings. She tap dances. She wasn't just tap dancing on a shoebox or something or down in the subway. She was trained by the great Gregory Hines, who is...
Henry Latang, Gregory Hines' teacher, and he choreographed everything that Gregory did, which is my uncle.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh. So let's talk about your tap dancing through that great lineage. What age?
Well, my uncle, he actually was a choreographer. He taught the Hines brothers from when they were 3 and 5. And he used to take them to the Apollo to watch the Nicholas brothers and as they were kids. And when Gregory actually did the Ed Sullivan show, my uncle actually choreographed that. I think Gregory was about 8 years old. They used a clip of it in the movie Tap. And so as Gregory's career progressed, my uncle also, he brought him in as to choreograph shows from UB to Sophisticated Ladies to the movie Tap to the movie Cotton Club. And so as a kid, I was really blessed because I would get to go in on my auditions. My mother was a singer and would be called a chanteuse. So she sang in 7 languages and performed all over the world. And but as a kid, I was born into it. In fact, my mother used to say that I was going to end up as a tap dancer or as a drummer because when she would play the piano and sing during her rehearsals, that was the only time I'd kick. So as a kid, I never was really turned on to anything else. I remember, starting piano lessons at 4 years old, starting to drum. My uncle used to have all these old sets from, the vaudeville old shows, and musicians that would come in. So he'd have piles and piles of drum sets in the back of the studio. And I actually remember when I first got my set, was around the time that Debbie Allen finally was cast on Broadway for the first time. She did Anita on Broadway. And she was coming in and out of the studio. She was one of his students as well, working out between shows. So I first became a drummer as a child drummer. And I worked on the movie Cotton Club as a little kid, in the number with Alfonso Ribeiro and Daria Hines, Gregory's daughter. And it was a child number that they kept us on set for 6 months. And then when they went over budget, they broke us up into different places. So I'm actually drumming at Grand Central as Gwen Verdon is saying goodbye to Richard Gere. And,
what?
As opposed to the big number we were supposed to do, which was kind of phenomenal, but they paid us great. As a little kid, to have big fat checks. That was a blessing. But I got to go, as a kid, I used to get to go in, and after my auditions, my childhood shows, I would, can you hear me?
Yeah, it needs to be a little louder.
Okay. As a kid, my shows, would go in for auditions, and my mother we'd have to wait for Uncle Henry to be finished in Sophisticated Ladies. So I would go over to the Lone Fontaine Theater, and I would sit either in the aisle or the few empty seats that were there and watch Gregory Hines and Judith Jamison and Mercer Ellington and Mercedes Ellington just live night after night. And my drum teacher was the drummer.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
So yeah, so that was cool. But my sister was a very proficient dancer. She did about 5 of the numbers in Cotton Club. She tried to get into the American Ballet, but my sister's not she's a little bit tanner than me, and back in those days, if you're a questionable ethnicity, it wasn't as embraced for what the American Ballet wanted, so they wouldn't even let her dance. They took one look at her and said, "Sorry, no," which crushed her.
Yeah.
But she was the dancer, and my uncle used to call me the comedian because I couldn't sit still and focus, and I would be in the studio, and I even would run the dance studio when I got older. I used to help manage the studio, but I would do hours every day of vocal classes. My mother was my first voice teacher, but she passed when I was 14. And
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, she was amazing, absolutely amazing.
What is the I want to talk about her when you get ready for it.
Yeah, and so then I moved to my uncle's place, and then I would stay in the studio all day. So I would do, an hour or 2 on my voice, an hour or 2 tapping, an hour drumming, and then I learned to write comedy because all of it I couldn't really do it that seriously. And I loved Gregory Hines so much.
Me too.
And watching him as a kid, he was the reason I wanted to get into comedy.
Really?
Because it's Sophisticated Ladies. Gregory he actually drummed in Sophisticated during the previews. They pulled the number, but when they were running a show in previews, he actually tapped down the stairs, got behind a set of drums, drummed, and tapped, and he was funny, and he could sing. So he was like the ultimate.
Wow.
To me, so yeah.
That's a real inspiration. I remember as a child watching the Hines brothers, like you said, and then Gregory Hines. I mean, he just knocked me off my feet watching him.
Yeah, he was incredible. When we got to the best part about being at my uncle's place was, I got to be around. I got to meet the Nicholas brothers and hang out with the Nicholas brothers and hang out and get to meet Cab Calloway and so many great artists that had come in and out of the studios, and then you start to get a very different look of what great art is, and also how so much of this is lost. Black history in the arts is really it's such lost footage because the level of performance that I grew up watching, it blows your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, you had such a great childhood to be able to be around it, and things that so many of us don't know.
Well, at that time too, when you grow up with that generation, they always wanted you to be a triple threat. You had to sing like hell, dance like hell, tell jokes, play an instrument. They would, as a kid, you would hear when they ask you what can you do this, you say yes, and the only problem should be the what they call overqualified. So is to be overqualified, and that would happen to a lot of Black artists being overqualified. So maybe you should hang back. So that should be the only issue, and that's how I was raised with that. So.
Wow. So you said that your mother. Let's talk about your mom. She was a chanteuse. I don't even know the definition of a chanteuse. That's how ignorant I am.
It's in the classification of Edith Piaf, the great French songstress who did the La Vie en Rose, which was that La Vie en Rose, the rose, to see the world through rose-colored glasses.
Yes.
So in that classification of a Shirley Bassey, Ema Sumac, Eartha Kitt, that was my mother's that classification of that style of singer. So when she was 17, she won a contest that Nat King Cole and Perry Como had sponsored her and she won, and they sent her to sing in opera houses all through Europe at 17. Wow. And she was also a concert level pianist. And then the UN would send her around the world to perform, and she would sing in 7 languages, and had a TV show in Brazil where she won the Brazilian equivalent to the Emmy, which she wrote, produced, and directed. And she was, my mother was just a phenomenal artist. So she could do really anything. She was also could illustrate, and design, and characters, and created cartoons and show ideas, and so that was my childhood. But she really had some phenomenal people that she was around.
Yes.
Like their Odettas and Jeffrey Holders, and like some of the greatest artists that were in her company.
So, do you have a picture close by of your mother? She's so beautiful. I didn't ask you ahead, so if you don't.
Yes, I do. Hold on, I do. 1 second.
It's really worth seeing, Christopher. Hi, Christopher.
And this was funny. A friend of mine that I went to high school with came to one of my shows. He surprised me, and he found on a website. He actually found this from like a website that was.
Oh my.
So hold on, she gets there.
There we go. That's perfect. Oh, she's so beautiful.
Thank you. And
Christopher Cowles is on Facebook, and he's telling me to tell you hello.
I love Chris. Chris, how are you? one of the kindest people I've met in this business. He really is.
Isn't he special?
Yeah, he just does so much for so many people in the community, and just no ego, and just an amazing, especially, when I stopped doing comedy for a long time and tried other businesses and trying to get into production, film production, and he was just always so supportive when I'd go to see him in the clubs, and just made, encouraging to get back out there.
Yes.
And,
Ricky Vernardo from Portland, Oregon is on with Rio's Ribs, and he's related to Snoop Dogg.
Really?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yes, he's sending up a heart to you.
I'd love to get some ribs. That's the other thing I'm craving in isolation. And I feel so greedy making a big batch just for myself.
The first time I got to know you is when you were cooking Italian food in your kitchen. And I thought you were such a hoot. And I was making all kind of comments, and you're like, who is this crazy Linda?
It's funny, I do have my mother's rib recipe, and, I keep that side going. But I actually, when my grandmother had gotten ill, she all her life kept trying to push me to be an Italian girl. And there was always such a battling relationship over me and my sister from the 2 different cultures of who's going to claim us. So, and I refused for my entire life that I'm not going to be a big-haired Italian girl because my mom passed, and I'm going to hold on to my black side. And then when she almost passed away, I was like, oh no, I'm going to lose the recipe. I better learn how to cook. So yeah, I got in, and I finally learned a bunch of recipes, and so it's kind of fun. I just love food. I had wonderful food on both sides of the family. So
Yeah. If you can ever catch Maija in the kitchen cooking on Facebook, it's a hoot.
yeah.
That's when I fell in love with Maija.
It's hilarious. My friend keeps saying that I need to do more cooking. So I may do artichokes this weekend. So if I can get my hands on some artichokes, I'll do the Italian artichokes.
Oh.
I'm not giving up my collard green recipe. I might need that down the road.
I live in a veterans village in Vegas. It's for veterans. It's an old motel that's been refurbished, and half of the people, they let veterans come in at a low price. And I was down talking to the other veterans. Most of them are just as funny as I am. They just don't have the courage to go do comedy, right? They got the stories. And this one girl says, oh, you passed out collard greens the other day, didn't you? And I'm like, I've never been there. Collard greens don't like me. I don't think so. Blintzes maybe, not collard greens.
Oh, that's hilarious. Blintzes, maybe.
Very close.
Yeah, that's funny. And it was funny because I have my Italian friends that are like, teach me the rib recipe. I'm like,
No.
I refuse. Yeah, I refuse to mix my cultures. I got to keep them separated.
Yeah.
You got to know what a good rib is to appreciate a good rib. And that's the one thing I love to do is, when I'm on the road, is drive across America looking for barbecue and some history spots.
Oh my gosh.
I love barbecue.
Well, in Portland, Oregon, at the Bernardo's have a restaurant called Rio's Ribs. And they started in a little outback next to a Bi-Mart or something out in way out on the way to the ocean. And then they moved into the Hollywood district, which is up and coming, and a historic area. And their restaurant has been burnt down twice, which is highly suspicious in Portland.
That's the Italian side. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, that is suspicious.
Yeah. So, and they keep coming back. They keep building it back up and doing it again. They refuse to go away.
And God bless them and keep them strong and safe, and that everyone stays safe during that. Yeah, it's crazy. There's so much people, so many negative things that can happen that we have to just work on.
Yes.
Supporting each other and persevering through. And I think that was one of the reasons why I love Chris Cole so much, is that you can't figure out sometimes what's going to come at you, and you can't anticipate it. But there's nothing quite like working in the support and finding supportive friends and groups, and that's why I love doing what I'm trying to do in the arts, because I find that comedy recently just feels so dark. It feels way too dark. So one of my goals has been, whether I make it or not, how much light can I bring through the comedy?
That's great.
If I can break that dark energy. And sometimes I really just try to focus on that before I begin. And how do I just connect and just bring up the energy, as opposed to, some of the ways that I've seen it. And I've done it that way in the past. I've done some kind of darker, get up and complain comedy.
Yeah.
It kind of hasn't inspired me to continue through the long-term journey of comedy. I think trying to inspire people and, break that dark energy and just getting them to laugh at just coming from a good place is what's
yes.
motivating me to stay in it,
It is very dark, and if I've only been doing this 6 years and 10 years writing, but in 6 years, I've had 2 people decide to end their lives without any notice.
Ooh.
One in New York, because I went there twice to live, and so then once when I was in New York, it was so sad because I had talked to him 3 hours before he did it. Yeah, and so when you're around comics, you never know what they're going through. And then, like everybody is right now, but comics are a special group of people that struggle.
Yeah, I feel the same thing. I've always had that mentality. I think because I lost my mom so young, is, that life is too short. So I don't really like to hold on to, things that could possibly be negative, or even negative opinions. Like, I have people constantly saying, well, that person wasn't that nice and you're being nice to them now. It's like, I don't have time to hang on to that. I just want to keep rolling the ball of good and positive forward. And when you're also picking up the mic and you're speaking, you're actually affecting people's process. You don't realize what you take in. It's almost the idea of, people say don't fall asleep to something negative. If you're having a hard time sleeping, turn off the news. But in the same way, even though we may be in a comedy club, you're still absorbing.
Yes.
So is it, what are you absorbing and what are you feeding? Are you feeding, rage, or are you feeding aware? You can feed awareness without having to feed rage.
Yes.
So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, awareness is good. Get people to think about, make changes. I love connecting with people. And one day I was here in Vegas at the Drybar mic, and this girl named Amy Blackwell came up to me, and I was just doing my usual, I'm a geriatric, I love Lucy, running around making everybody happy. And she said, you are like the confidence fairy. Because I said, I'm going to use that.
That's great. That's interesting. When I first started, I had some friends that were in comedy. I remember you went up and you had this really rough set, but you just stayed in there. And I remembered thinking that way later on, and I'll do the same in my own set. And you don't realize how your own behavior can sometimes affect other people. Because I always thought like, oh no, they looked at me as like, hard-headed or stubborn or nutty or, as opposed to the idea that, some people might not see it that way. They may look at it as an example of, hey, well, I'll press on if you press on.
Exactly. When people tell you that, I'm sure you've had people tell you that you have been an inspiration to keep them going.
Well, I sometimes hear that. I'm one of those people who don't look for the compliments, really. I look for the connection, but I always like compliments, like, ooh, kind of goes over my head.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I just keep thinking it's just constantly, constant evolve, constantly growing. And like, I don't even like to look back at old stand-up sets. And, we're forced to have to promote these. Like I'm promoting my Drybar comedy set right now.
Which is hilarious. You guys have to listen to it. Ricky, Christopher, go watch it. Oh my gosh, it's so good. They loved you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was funny because I just tried to focus on elevating thought before I went in, and said just try to just have your right motives of making this room, giving to the room as opposed to wanting if they accept you or not. And people seem to like that.
Yes.
In fact, there was a quote I worked on that I was given by someone. It was a spiritual quote that said, and I was worried before the show, so I called him and he said, he read the quote, which was, right motives give pinions to thought and strength and freedom to speech and action.
Wow.
So what are your motives? And I was like, And then he said, do you know what a pinion is? And I said, no. And he said, pinions are like the edge of the eagle's wings that give it extra height.
Wow. Or
an angel's ring that give it extra height. So your right motives will give you extra height in your speech and freedom in your speech and action. So I thought of that before I went on. And then this is funny because I taped it and then I put on Facebook randomly, what should I name my special? So a gentleman who had booked me, but I never met him before, wrote my opinion.
Wow.
And so I was like, oh, that's the title. And the manager argued and argued. I was like, nope, that's the title. So, and it was just focusing, here's the other thing we were just talking about being the confidence fairy, numerous times when I taped shows in the past, when I first was in comedy, I would get so nervous that almost like break down in tears, riddled with anxiety. And I remember my second taping was my Def Comedy Jam. And I remember watching Chappelle, because Chappelle was my host, and he was like my mentor and kind of big brother at the time. And I remember his calmness and how assured he was and how he was just focusing on what to hit. So when I taped Drybar, I had the fear, and then I said, well, you can choose to either be in this state or emulate confident behavior. So you can trick yourself into, well, I don't feel confident. Well, you can pretend you're confident.
Yes.
And that will help. And so that shift, those elements, that's why I was, I think, happy with the Drybar set, period, was because I felt free. I didn't do a set list, because I remember watching Tony Woods, who was Chappelle's mentor, and talking with Tony for many years, and Tony saying that him and Dave and the great Greer Barnes in New York were my three favorite comedians. Neither of them, they know kind of what they're going to hit, but they don't do it as a set list. They let it flow. And so that's what I wanted to do. I said, that's the next level. So let me get the confidence to not do a set list, to just go on and know I'm in comedic shape and just have fun. And it ended up, the fun was able to override everything else.
Oh, and it showed. I mean, when I was watching, are you talking about the Drybar comedy? Was that way?
Yeah, the Drybar. That was the first time I ever did that. I didn't go with a set list and hold on to my jokes and just having to switch my energy.
Oh my gosh. Well, I noticed how great the Drybar session was, and the audience, I think they stood up for you and clapped. Didn't they give you a
Yeah. they were. It was fun. It was a great opportunity to just see where I was. You know, it's like growing. So you take the next little taping, and hopefully that turns into another one, and gets the word out. But I have yet to watch it. I don't want to watch it. I don't like what I'm wearing. I just keep going, why did I wear those pants? I had the other pants. Why did I wear those pants? It's crazy. It has nothing to do with any reality.
When I look at my videos, I look at what I'm wearing and how I'm moving and if my smile, I don't listen to the words.
I'm like, look at the bags under your eyes. I can't believe you take, like, oh, you look horrible. Oh my God. Why'd you do this? Everything else but what I'm supposed to, focus on.
Just this last month before the shutdown, Jimmy Earl from LA, Sacramento, he put me on a show at the Stratosphere as a guest spot. That's
great.
Yeah, it was like my big break, right? And so I got up there and I knocked it out of the park. I just, I don't ever say that I killed, but he did, right? And it feels so
That's
good.
So great.
I know.
That's so great. But yeah, you know what? It's funny because comedy is so much confidence, and it's that kind of getting past your own public speaking anxiety and will they like me, and just getting, once you can roll past that, and I'm feeling that way now a lot when I'm on stage, is just getting to where it's fun.
Yeah.
Breaking that. Once you start to get to where you're so excited, and you can just stay in. It's okay to be excited, But I think sometimes you can take the excited meter and turn it into negative anxiety. So you could and just switch it over to, oh, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
And then it changes how you tell your jokes and how you can act.
My dad used to, he survived the Holocaust, and I asked him how, and he said, you have to trick F your mind.
Wow.
And that's kind of like that, you have to, you can look at it like everything's really negative, or you can get in there and try your hardest and think it's positive, and maybe it'll turn out positive. I'm not talking.
It's like this right now. I feel like the challenge of us being, inside right now could either be turned into, how do I make this quality time working on things that I haven't had time to, I'm now working out with a phone app. I've never done that in my life. Writing some scripts, or what did I want to get done? Or I can stare at the news and make myself hysterical. I mean, it's good to tune in for a little bit to catch up on, give it an hour of the day. But otherwise, it's the same thing. You can either give into fear, or you can be wise, do what's being told, and then find some other ways to, take advantage of it, like this, doing a Zoom interview.
This gets me out of bed, I'll tell you, because I was getting depressed there, and I was like, okay, I can either get sucked under, or I can help other people not to get sucked under.
I feel the same way. It's the same way. It's how to, and also too, if we do these things, maybe people do tune in and they get to shift their thought and feel a little bit, get their mind onto something else.
Yes. There's nothing worse than watching a comic that seems oblivious to what's going on in the world. But, we aren't insensitive to it. We know it's going on. It's just a mind shift for a few minutes,
Yeah. But even if you acknowledge it and move on, I mean, it's funny, the last few sets that I did, I had the first few moments were on Corona and the coronavirus, because it was starting to pick, but I literally got on a plane the next day and came back, and now I'm kind of, my car's trapped there and I'm trapped here, but I left it with friends, so it's safe.
That's good.
Yeah, but it's, in fact, my sister even said too, she said, you better not leave it at the airport because you might end up getting stuck somewhere. So being here, though, I planned to come back and get a bunch of work done that I would be stuck in the house doing anyway. So
when you,
really complain.
I'm so curious to pick your brain about something with your writing process. So you've written one-woman shows.
Yeah.
So where does the nugget for a show come from for you, or your jokes?
Well, I think something that bothers me, my first one-person show, which is called, it's called Rats, and it's 6 modernized Shakespeares. in the story of what is love worth. And it does all the modern Shakespeare's of, one character that's scared to tell somebody that you're in love with them. And all these other characters in the middle of the night come like she's asleep and can't sleep and do the monologue. And each character comes alive and gives the argument of why it's not worth anything. Love is why, historically, paralleling throughout history, that this, as Shakespeare said, the story of true love never did run smooth. And in the end, it's Othello's was what's, it's loss and missing out. And so that whole question of, looking at people's relationships and love and how bad they can go, that at least I feel as if I could share that point of view. And the actual play in the end ends up being the love letter. Wow. So it's done like as if the guy's in the audience, convincing him why not. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So but in that way, because it was, it sat with me for so long of this, why do I have to accept this? And that's kind of my protest. Why do I have to accept this? Like an example, today someone was writing me about why do I tell people that I'm black? If you look white, why don't you listen? Each group hears it differently. Italians have wanted. My younger cousins have no problem with me, but I have family members that did not want me to acknowledge my mother. And then on Black America, everyone is mixed. This is historic. There's other black folks that look my complexion, and because of the American laws, we're considered black people, people of color. And no matter what your complexion is, and to say, so if there's a separatism, but the conundrum is everyone hears it differently. So white America believes if I tell people I'm black, I'm offending black people. But if black people hear that I'm saying that I'm mixed, they think I'm trying to be better than being black, so then I'm offending black people. So and I do believe a big chunk of some of the issues we have racially are in dialect, in the way people hear or don't want to hear when you say certain things. And so for me, that's been something that, I was working with some great artists that inspired me to get back to comedy. And it was a writer I really looked up to. And he had said to me, why don't you walk the uncomfortable middle of being you?
Whoa.
And so I didn't realize I was writing from the perspective of, here's my jokes that please white America, and here's my jokes that please black America, and here are my jokes that please Italians. Wow. It becomes now, here's me, and these are all your issues, everybody, and here I am being torn in the middle of it, and that's really given me it's driving me, because whenever I hear something like this man telling me today, don't tell anybody, well, why don't you just say this, and you can't, you don't know my experience. I've spent a lifetime of being me and being accepted and rejected everywhere, and really think I have a handle on it. But being a woman, they sometimes look at me as though maybe you're confused, you don't know, and you don't I have a joke of people act like I don't know what I look like. I know what I look like. And so, it was fun too when I first started back with this material. And I'll tell you exactly how I broke it up, but this is the blessing. The person who said to do this kind of writing was Robert Townsend, to write Walk the Uncomfortable Middle. And as soon as I finished that material, I ended up getting to work with Sinbad. And just on this basis of complexionism, he was like a godsend, just the perfect person to understand exactly what's going on and exactly the challenge of what I deal with as a stand-up, and how people see me when I tell them what I am, or because it becomes very different. And I have a joke when I say two jokes. One is when somebody says, "Are you Italian?" I'm black and Italian, which means I'm black, which means because when you say you're mixed, it's really all black people are mixed. And then there's another one where I do, yes, black people have fought and marched and died for the right, so that I could say, I'm mixed. I'm not black. So these are things that one, that give me a passion. Two, the process of writing. Many years I wrote premises, and even when I quit comedy, I came up with every backup plan I wanted, and they all failed. I was successful at comedy right off the bat, and then I left it and ran every different direction, and nothing's worked since, like, unless it's outside of comedy. So I have notes in notebooks everywhere. I took the software called Final Draft, which is a script software, and in the elements where it says scene, which would be interior scene heading, interior Joe's bedroom, I replaced it with the joke title. Inside of the body, where I would do action of a scene, I wrote the premise, I wrote out the joke, and then I would add the dialogue if I was doing an act out between characters. What that allowed me to do was I just left myself alone and just wrote the joke topic and wrote it out. Even if it was old jokes, joke topic, write it out. Because I wrote all my old jokes, and I discovered 1,000 new jokes within old jokes that I never saw because I didn't write them out. And when you write them out, you can see so much more opportunity for wordplay. Now, if I wrote 15 jokes and I went to the kitchen for a sandwich, all of a sudden I'd be like, you know what I can add to that joke? Oh, which triggers this thought. And I could leave it unfinished because I had them all done in topics. And then once I had them done in topics, I was also able to separate them onto pages. So just like a joke set, sometimes this piece goes to that piece. That piece goes to this piece. So I could shift them. And then I was inspired when I saw Joan Rivers passed away. They had her library, and it was all index cards. So I was able also through Final Draft to print them in index cards. So you could actually keep a joke catalog. And I could say, well, I've done these jokes on Drybar. So now I need to go back into my catalog and pull out 3 or 4 jokes that might replace those jokes if I'm doing a similar topic. So I don't burn that joke. And then it's just also a process. But writing them out, and George Carlin told me this years ago, because I had the opportunity to interview him. And he wrote every joke. Pryor did everything in his head. Carlin wrote every single word, and he would put them on index cards, and he would go to the stage in the middle of his set. He would stop and say, I'm trying this new bit out. He pretended he was reading from the card, but he said he already knew the joke. The cards were for the audience, that they knew I was trying something. And then he recorded it. He said, I recorded it not to hear if the joke worked or didn't work, or if they laughed or didn't laugh. I recorded to see if I said it the way I intended for it to sound. Wow. So he knew how the joke was supposed to sound. So finally, because of that process, that it really was George's process, is what forced me to write, to really write. And then, when you're when you have great people around you, like a Townsend or a Sinbad or, Chappelle, you want to show your best. So I did have a bunch of jokes that fell to the floor because I wrote them in bars. and then my manager, I got a new manager who's at Omnipop, and boy is he a pain in the neck. He's like, you have to be able to work clean. I need you to work clean. Can you do this clean? Because he's like, I can get you 10 times the work clean. And then there's certain jokes that whether clean or not, he's like, you're better than that. You're better than that joke. And I'm like, but the joke gets it. They let out. He's like, I don't care. You're better than that joke. And so that's a process too of crafting who you are. Not just is it funny, but crafting your own legacy.
Yes. Once you catch on to who, like Paul Lyons in Philadelphia gave me one word once, and it changed me on stage. He said, why don't you think about being authentic? And I sat and meditated, I don't know, for a week about what is authentic. And now everybody's out there trying to figure out their persona or their message. And if you just try to be who you are, everything else falls into place.
Yeah.
It really helped me.
Yeah, that's a good phrasing too. That's making me chew on that. I'm going to chew on that after this discussion. I'm like, because it's interesting. I think that's just the journey of the artist anyway, to just keep digging into what's truthful. When I started to do elements of my mom on stage, it was so hard. It was the scariest pieces out of everything I've done. But it's oddly the thing that's getting me booked. Like that's the thing that's getting me booked everywhere. So and what's interesting too is that some people who are helping me now with branding that have come out of the blue that are really just amazing people that are just showing up on my journey to help me rebrand myself. They're saying, well, why don't we go with this concept of how your mother was, and let's just put a little polish on what you're doing, and it fits me, because I've always tried to be a little bit rougher of a presentation, but it's not authentically me. I did like the Def Comedy Jams, and I tried to be hip hop, and I worked in hip hop radio, and it just really wasn't authentically me. And when I do my hour piece, Incognito, I actually do the story of the journey through hip hop and trying to and coming back to my roots and really finding my place and being okay with it.
Yeah. So once they give us the all clear to get out of our huts, what's the next thing that you plan on having people come and hear you do?
Well, I have an album I'm supposed to be recording in July. I'm not sure if that's falling through. I'm trying to chase right now a special. I have some interest, so we'll see if we have that happen. And just getting on the road, because it's funny. It's what's interesting. When I first started, I didn't have a lot of stage time, but I had a lot of stage time, but I didn't have a lot of material. So, and I was new in comedy, and I worked constantly in New York. But when you are in shape as a comedian, it's pretty amazing. And when I have been laying off for more than a decade of doing comedy, but I would come back in to pick up a check or go back in to just try it and then disappear and try it and disappear. It is different. I'm in shape now. My manager has had me working every single weekend, almost every single day for over a year. And it's really, you can't beat, and I say this to my friends, like a great comedian that is one of my closest friends. He's so funny, Jeffrey Husbands. If you know Jeff Husbands.
He's the one that he hosts a lot of Incognito with you, doesn't he?
Yeah, he actually is the one who actually helped me produce it. He actually took his money out of his pocket and rented a theater and said, this show has to be on its feet, and helped me run it. So he's been incredible. So he runs the Maija show as well with me, and Jeff is. But it's funny because he's on the road a lot now, so he's not doing as much hosting as he is, featuring, because he's actually a stronger headliner. And some of the places were saying they couldn't use him as a feature because he's too strong.
Wow.
He's so high energy. But it's funny because I keep saying to Jeff is that, being in LA as a comedian, you can't even get a gauge of really what you're doing, except for when you get to, I'm in New York and Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and that whole East Coast, from DC to New York and I guess to New Haven is just a totally different feedback. I've written jokes that I know work. I've done them here in LA, and never got a laugh. When I went back to New York, it's a joke that I could close the set on a joke that would get a laugh here.
Wow.
Because it's just they hear differently. They're just their real audiences and they're real people, quick-minded, everyday people, as opposed to people who are focused on their own thing in LA. So I was saying that to Jeff is that he's such a great talent. Just get on the road. He has to get in front of real people. You can't do it even in an open mic as much as we try to. Yeah. Open mics are good for words, to say it, to get that cadence, just to do as Carlin was saying. Did I say it the way I intended for it to sound? You can practice that rhythmically.
Exactly.
In fact, when I wrote Incognito, and Jeff was cracking up because that's when I first met him. He was running a show for Adam Barnhart at the Comedy Store, and he's like, "I'll help you go through it." And I actually decided to do it in music charts because I knew I wasn't getting the stage time out here. So I wrote it. I put it in big yellow pages and taped them together like you do a song, and double space them, and then put rhythms above each element. So if it was a whole note or a quarter note or a 16th note, I could say ba 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 ba.
Wow.
So because it is rhythmic at the same time. So it's working. As an actress, you want to get it so it's organic, But in comedy, you have to get it where it's timed still. It's still timing. So I think it works all those muscles. So that's just another note to think rhythmically. If you put on a metronome, and can you say that joke within the exact timing that you need to say it?
Exactly.
Beat, bop, 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 bop. And you can say your joke just that way.
Wow, I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna write that down.
There's extra ways of how to work this out. And the more you get into stories, a lot of it, I find the greatest comedy doesn't look like a joke. Like Richard Pryor said, the line of, when I read it, like in Prior Convictions, it didn't read funny. When you're on fire running down the street, people get out of your way. That doesn't sound funny because he was on fire. but it's all in a great comedian or the great artist that we would watch from. Like I love this Sid Caesars. My favorite is Zero Mostel.
Oh.
And Zero's accuracy of moments and his ability to hit so much within such small phrases. If you ever it's online, go back, he does an entire album of the Grinch Who Stole Christmas before the cartoon was ever done, I believe. And
wow.
He did an album of it. And he plays all the voices. But his ability, so you look at that and you start to look at great comedy is not in a script that shouldn't be obvious. If you're doing a monologue set for a late night show, that's different. It's jokes. But great comedy, really the greatest moments are in the moments. So that's where it's interesting for me now, especially running like my Incognito show, because there are elements that I know that I have to hit a moment to make it funny. And that's like the beautiful things. When you hit a moment in this, and there's not even a joke there, it's just an expression or a physicality or something, and then the room just goes. That's like the best feeling ever.
Yeah.
And to have the courage to go with it.
Yeah.
Because there's a joke that I have of where I have to fall almost, it's like falling to the floor and crawling to a bed, and then taking a deep breath and realizing, and it's in a character, but it's a joke I do about my mother being so bourgeois, and that it wasn't phony, and people are calling her phony for being bougie. And I said, "What? We were that extra when things were bad." I said, even when she wasn't well, she'd fall into the floor and I'd do it. She'd call me Maija, bien, bien. She'd call me in French, bien, bien. Take me to the bed, and I'd pick her up and I'd put her on the bed, and I have, but I'm hanging on the side. When I throw myself to the side of the bed, and like I'm on the floor, bien, bien, and then I lift myself up to the bed, and then I go, is this a 300 thread count? Get me back to the floor. Let's get in the linen closet, like something like that. But there's so many turns of moments because it's my reaction, audience reaction, character from floor to bed to breathe to stop to identify. So those are all moments. And and if you look at the greats, if you look at the Gene Wilders, these guys that were that could really execute great comedy, it wasn't punchline. It was a breath. It was a moment.
I'm gonna go study that.
Yeah, and I think in stand-up that we have the opportunity to do both. We could get people in with simple verbiage, simple words, your first few, your few minutes that you need to get them to go. So you want to have stuff that you get into, bump, 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 and you pepper it. It's just like starting, a song, or even like when you're starting a car, you let the engine run for a second. Bump, 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 you want the timing of the car to run before you rev it, So that's really, it's interesting. Chappelle likes to, and Dave and I were very good friends, especially when I started, and I think it was more because we had he knew his Shakespeare. This is he knew his Shakespeare, and he knew his jazz. And I grew up with so much jazz with my family, with the Duke Ellington shows and stuff. So if you listen to some of the greats, they start with the big bump, ding, dum, dee da 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 da. So like all these little elements of jazz and comedy is so much of a rhythm of so like when I wrote Incognito also too, I used to blind myself out with my own thought out with music. So if I'm sitting and I have concepts, I would blast music that takes me so far out of myself and into my safe space that I could feel creative. What music makes you feel creative? You know, when I structured Incognito, I structured it to Bach.
No way.
When I wrote the material to a Dizzy Gillespie live concert that he did in London. And so for that, then I could just sit and I could hear it and I could hear it and I could hear it, and then the jokes come out, and then you don't even realize that you're subconsciously being taken over by rhythm.
What? That's so cool.
Yeah, so it's a really great way to get out of yourself. Everybody has their own what speaks to them, you know. Some things make me fearless. Like before I perform, I listen to like gospel music. There's a piece right before I did that Drybar taping. I listened to this song called "Joyful, Joyful." That's from Sister Act 2.
I love that song.
Okay, and I play that. I come on the stage like I'm bouncing off the wall, and I did that. I played it and played it and played it and played it and played it, and then they called me to the stage, and they actually did a false start, and they felt bad because they had to start me back over again. But it was funny to me, so I bounced back in. Everything became free. So you can use other forms to help you obtain freedom, so that you can feel safe enough to create. And that's the hardest thing, because 99% I think of creativity is getting past your fear and shutting that off, because your fear, even as a tap dancer, will not let your foot move. It locks your muscles.
Good Lord.
So overjudgment, so whatever takes you there, and to get to that state of just playing. Like you did when you were a kid, you didn't overjudge, how you painted a picture.
When my parents were raising me, because they both survived the Holocaust, my mom survived by being used by the SS because she wasn't Jewish. So I had parents that were literally checked out. They weren't present ever. They couldn't be. They still were in the camps. And so that's where my comedy comes from, is trying to get them to quit being sad and to be, I didn't know the verbiage, but my whole childhood, if I could just get them to be in this moment with me and laugh at anything, and that's what I try to do on stage.
That's very powerful.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. You can go into a room and, I just did this. The last two shows I had done, it was so dark before I went on. And I never say to my manager, I had to this time, I said, I don't care who the comics are that go on before me, but I don't want them talking about vile stuff. I'm still a woman. You're warming up the room for a woman. Like, why would you say some of the things you're saying? And then on top of it, the audience was older. So it was, if you're doing it, 90% of the audience is 40 up. So why would you be so dirty? And so you feel this anxiety, anger, some people feeling like they're being pressured into laughing at something. There's a lot that's going on to be able, and then you have to stop and say, how do I just get them to laugh and stop? Like, it's, how do you break that energy?
Yes.
It's like watching a room full of people that are mesmerized with a different energy, and you have to come in and break that hypnosis.
And when you can do it, it's such a great feeling, but sometimes it's so hard if they've been, sitting there going, God, when is this guy going to get done with his crap?
Well, yeah, and I think the other thing is that it is hard, because like I've had to work in places where I'm just constantly having to just go and almost grab different elements of the room and just keep loosening them up, But I do feel that same thing, is that sometimes you're like, oh, they're just waiting for something, and how am I going to... The key is that we don't break our energy. That's the challenge. We don't break that. I just want you guys... Because there's a difference to pander to want them to laugh. There's two different things. Am I pandering to try to tap dance for them to make them laugh? Or am I trying to shake up my best friend who's depressed, and I just need her to let go and just giggle. There's two different ways. So some people will say, well, you're pandering for a laugh. But that's not it. I'm not trying to get them to accept me. I'm kind of putting my arms around my friend and saying, it's going to be okay. Isn't this ridiculous? Look at this ridiculous situation. And then it melts off. And I think for a while, for a long time in comedy, I didn't really understand the difference of that. And I see doing as much stage time as I've been doing now, I'm seeing that.
I hear you loud and clear. I totally get what you're saying. Because you can tell when somebody's pandering. There's a difference.
Yeah, but I think it's just about, the difference is us removing our fear of having a laugh that they're not laughing. It's taking the self out of it.
Yeah.
But you can still be yourself, and you can be truthful as yourself, and your organic self. I'm not trying to just make you laugh. I'm still doing it in that vein of humor. The difference is taking my own personal fear.
It's so amazing because we can look back to the times that we just said anything to get a laugh. And when we're saying things that we really feel and are passionate about, and, we want them to understand it, but we want to make it funny. I mean, there's so much better laughter response we get when we are saying what we really feel, not just because, I know this will get a laugh, but like we're really connected with it, and we are in the moment connecting if they get what we're saying. I mean, it's a whole nother plane.
That's the biggest work, I think, of the comedian, is to get them on the same page, so we can have those moments of, oh, you had to be there, but with total strangers, and it was about a story that you wanted to share that they had to be there for, but they weren't. So how do we get them there? And turn that into a fresh moment. So to get them on the page, and that's kind of, that's really like the craft right there.
Have you ever gone on stage and the people were laughing before you even took the mic and talked?
No, they're usually booing before I take the mic and talk.
I don't know what it's about, but people laugh at me before I get the mic out.
That's fun. Well, because you have like a really sweet look. Yeah, I can see that though. Like for me, when I walk on, they're like, she ain't gonna be funny. You got to say. I have to fight with them before I open my mouth. They just assume there's no way. There's no way. So, yeah, I'm fighting doubt more than I'm fighting, she's going to be funny. So.
Well, gosh, thank you so much for your time. Please tell the people listening, all two of them, if they're still on here, where people...
We share it, and then they get to look at it later.
Yes. So you're Maija DiGiorgio on Facebook. Where else can they follow you?
Follow me on Instagram, and everything else, it's under $1 Million Maija.
$1 Million Maija.
Yeah, Maija. So.
And your mother's name, can you please remind me what her name is?
Sylvia Copeland.
Sylvia Copeland. Yeah, real legend in the music world.
Yes.
And it's called a chanteuse?
Chanteuse, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go look that up because I was really dumb about that. I knew she was a singer, but there's a separate category for chanteuse, so I need to learn.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Maija. Love you.
Thank you. Stay well. Love you too.
Love you. Bye.
Bye. How do I turn this thing off? Where's my glasses?